So the first announcement is Joseph's book, Trust Me, is out. And I've had a sneak peek at the manuscript, and it's an awesome book. I find, for what we do, especially on projects, trust is usually the place, the root cause of all the other issues, the lack of trust, of all the other issues we have on a project. In this book here, How Big Things Get Done, I love his quote: projects don't go bad, they start bad. And the challenge whenever you get into consultants or people coming in talking about trust building exercises, it's all fuzzy stuff. And there's not really a process of going through how the brain operates and the body operates from that initial survival skepticism. And everyone's on a scale, right, Joseph? Everyone's kind of starts on a, give you the benefit of the doubt, trust but verify, bullshit until proven otherwise. Everyone's on that scale. But it is but they all start out with that kind of vigilance, waiting for the other shoe to drop type of thing. And so I'm excited for the book, Joseph. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's been what, a 15, 20-year project?
Yeah, since the mid 80s. So
okay. Since disco.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, what else can you not trust in besides disco?
Is there a particular disco song that you identify most with when it comes to trust?
Oh my gosh.
Staying Alive.
There you go. Rob, we know where you spend too much time.
Disco's still alive in my home.
Okay. Wow. Leisure Suits too? Of
course.
I'm back in the I'm a lot further back, Rex. So, the song that comes to mind is always People Are Strange When You're a Stranger.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, People Are Strange. Yep, I know the song. We're back in the same era. So to build the bridge from last week, and Nathan, thank you very much for stepping in and juggling and all of that. Just to set why we're doing this, I think there's a couple of benefits. Going through the exercise itself really hones your Jedi skills, because these strengths, and we first found it between the difference between Gallup and Core Clarity, where there's 12 of the 34 strengths. The Gallup places in domains, that's what they call them, differently than the quadrants of Core Clarity. So that raises an immediate interesting question. What's the difference? Why? Well, when we get to that difference, what we find is that the factor analysis approach that Gallup uses, in other words, the strengths, when people assess, the strengths that tend to show up together, more commonly together, are put in categories, and that's called factor analysis. So that tends to display itself more in how it looks to others. And I like to use the example, achiever and responsibility both fall into what the execute domain for Gallup, the energize quadrant for Core Clarity, and the acting zone. Well, we break it out, acting and relating. So Core Clarity's take on it is that what we want to identify is the engagement side, what energizes you from the inside. So they put it in the relating side. So as I started looking at, so what's the real difference? Well, one of them is around loyalty or ownership, and the other is around reliability. So the challenge and the question we had as I started working with it is finding some people identify more with the reliability side of the equation, and some people identify more with the loyalty side of the equation. So just from our own training, this is a great Jedi exercise for seeing where people divide. The other thing I started noticing is that if you have 5 strengths, you have responsibility in that strength, the strength would tend to gravitate towards others in one of the 2 zones. So if you had, for example, achiever and focus in your top 5, then your responsibility, people would tend to choose it as an acting strength. The same with a ranger. Or if you had relator and includer in your top 5, that strength would tend to gravitate towards the orbit of the blue or the relating strengths. Or a ranger, if it was more, if you had strategic and analytical, that a ranger would tend to move into the thinking zone. Or if you had achiever and discipline, it would tend to move into the acting zone. So that was interesting for me to observe, and then begin, use a term called chameleon. And the chameleon, it's not always that way, but there's this heuristic or rule of thumb that it tends to move in that direction. So from a coach or a consulting standpoint, it's not that the individual needs to know that, but it gives you another key insight into where that person sees themselves as a get-it-done person, or sees themselves as a relationally oriented person in the terms of responsibility. And so from a coaching standpoint, that helps us. So the third challenge was, okay, we've got this system and we're seeing this tendency. How do we help people navigate? So in Genius Spark, we've got those 12 strengths where we've created that dividing line, like with responsibility. And the way I ask it is that before we look at these 8 traits, what I'd like to do is look at these 2 traits that apply to responsibility and find out which one is more true for you. That's how I phrase it. And so they will choose one or the other. And then as they go in, I'm also looking for, are they picking a trait that reflects that choice, or are they picking a trait that is like on the acting side? Not that any of them is right or wrong, but again, we're here to really help people understand themselves. And these are just clues for us to be curious about and ask. And so if someone picked, I'm reliable as a trait, after they picked I'm loyal, I would ask, I said, so where does that come from? How does that look? How do you reconcile that with that loyalty side of you? How do you see this reliability side? And the purpose, again, what we're trying to do is that the magic is in them thinking aloud through a framework of traits to help them get clear about who they are at their best. And they have the agency to pick it. And so with that agency, they're crafting this description of who they are at their best. Now, the reason we're doing that is because that goes back to the science of the 1950s on how we function, as how the brain functions as a goal-seeking organ. Because the brain is a goal-seeking organ, the clearer the coordinates of that goal and the reinforcement of that picture within the context of performance, this is performance science again, and the feedback we give it helps it stay on that trajectory. So the clearer, more frequent, and the more angles of feedback, the more someone's brain begins to move and move and move to adopting the story or the narrative, getting clarity, connecting the experience or the energy of it with the performance, and the brain continues to educate itself. And that's the underlying principle, which makes this different from any other platform out there, because every other platform is going to get you to focus on learning more about the trait or the strength and the background, but it's not in context, it's not personalized, and it's not working with the science we know on how we change. So the science of performance science is, again, the same kind of science that Michael Phelps uses, which is he imagines the performance he wants, his best performance. And he also, you know, we won't get into this side, but I use this when someone's in a high stakes context on what is the outcome you're looking for and the performance to drive that outcome. Imagine that. For Michael Phelps, then he looks at the obstacles that could get in the way of that. And then he looks at the plan to get there. So for me this morning, I read my paragraph, I looked at my events, asked the question, how will I perform at my best in my earlier meeting with a client that I had, with this group here, and I've got another meeting that I'm going into. All I do is ask the question, and the brain works behind the scenes. This is the challenge we all face. And this is why I say, if you're doing it, then you're going to know the challenge it represents. And then you're going to help others build the bridge to do it. And they may not do it every day, but consistent reinforcement. And at some point in time, the aha light goes on. I saw it. I experienced it. I know what it feels like. Once the aha, it's like a flywheel. It's that hedgehog effect. You know, you start it slowly, then a dot connects and another dot. And then, you know, I won't start the day without reading my paragraph. And then in the end, reflecting on it. So this part of it, we've all experienced in other ways, on the brain having a goal in mind, like a new car, a vacation, or something that we've wanted. And we just kind of see, wow, there's one of those examples over there. That is the brain in action. It cannot take in all the stimulus you have. So it has to filter. And it filters based on survival and desire. Now, all we've done is we've hacked the desire standpoint that athletes have used, and astronauts have used, and pilots have used, and Navy SEALs have used for decades. But now we're starting to do that because no other system does that. And what this does is it really simplifies the whole journey and the whole process. Now, the reason for an alternative assessment is twofold. One, I would like to have an assessment where we don't have to pause and say, hey, pick between these two and then these 8. So that's number one. Number two, that if I want to scale, and if we want to help you scale beyond your client base, then we need an alternative assessment to get outside of Gallup's constraints and restrictions on how we use their assessment tool. And then the third part of it is that once we have our own assessment, then we will be mapping Enneagram, DISC, Myers-Briggs, maybe Hogan, to the trait sentences. Going through this exercise is also helping us clarify these sentences and clarify the differentiation. No system is perfect, not even Gallup's, but they are the gold standard. And I've always had trouble running into some of the ways they describe some of their strengths. And there's some that you emotionally resonate more than others. You know, like consistency. A lot of people don't resonate with that unless you put it in context. So that's the reason. Now, what we've done with last week is, if you go to Basecamp, you will see I've done a summary of last week's discussion on each of the strengths that we looked at. And then I went to ChatGPT and said, you're an expert on the Clifton strengths. Weigh in with your opinion. What do you think is good about our descriptions and our alternative descriptions? So that's part of what makes me excited about this whole thing. You know, we're not moving away from the Clifton strengths. I know one of the individuals last week said, you know, does this mean we're not using Clifton strengths? It's still probably going to be the foundation for several years to come. But at some point in time, our process and our product and our solution will gain critical mass, and we'll go way beyond what we do with Gallup, because we'll have a more simplified approach with more insight. A case in point, was it last week I did Andrews or the week before?
It was last week because you were going to be on the call, but then the lady sent us the wrong date.
Oh, that's right. Right. Yeah. So this was 40 individuals from the marketing group of the largest beer distributor in Texas. And it included everybody from the EVP down to the warehouse and truck drivers. Now, normally for 40 people, this would probably be a 3.5, maybe 5-hour workshop. This was 2 hours. We were able to do what I typically would have to do in the traditional training mode, going through all the strengths and what it is. This is the same analogy of let's get them on the bicycle, give them some training wheels, and just get them to talk to each other and share back and forth and compare and share. At the end of the workshop, the EVP came back and said, this was amazing. He said, I've got people here who have GEDs in high school who've never sat in on a workshop like this before, and came to me and said, they've never had anything like this, and it's opened up a whole new world. And this is the first tool that we've used that I can use it throughout. The executives can get as much value as the people on the front line. So we accomplished more in less time, reached more individuals. And that's the exciting thing. Now, the challenge for me is going to figure out these one-day workshops that I used to do. How do I do those now? Because I don't need a full day. So how do I charge my full fee for a workshop? So that's a good problem to have. But the EVP signed up and said, I want an all-day workshop where we spend half a day with my leadership team, and then you do one-on-one with my leaders on their teams. So that's the promise of that. So before I pull up the spreadsheet, any comments on this preamble, so to speak, questions, or just observations from last week? And I'm going to pull up the spreadsheet.
I have a question, Rex, and that's on Gallup, because I'm just scratching the surface getting started on all this, and I'm hesitant to learn all the names and definitions, and if it's going to change someday to your own assessment. So you're saying what I heard today is that's not happening? Your own assessment, Genius Spark?
No, I am going to create my own assessment to solve those challenges that I had mentioned. Now, the good news is that the process doesn't require you to have to be an expert on any of them. But having knowledge and insight on them just gives you a leg up if you're into deep coaching. But again, this is set up almost like Rogerian therapy. You know, what do you think about this? How would you do it this way? How do you relate to the strength? Give me an example of what it looks like. What do others say? Have you gotten feedback from others? That's the level of expertise. And the better you get at asking questions, then the better you will be. And it doesn't require any deep knowledge. And that was part of the constraint, is I was the constraint for companies to learn this and scale it through. I had a conversation this morning with the president of a division for a construction firm, and he said, you've gotten us into Core Clarity. We've been using it for 10 years. We love it. Why would we change? And I said, well, let me ask you a question. Can you lead a Core Clarity workshop with your team? And he said, no. And I said, well, you'll be able to lead conversations, discussions, have employee feedback, and all of your other managers well with Genius Spark. And you won't need a facilitator or an expert to help you through the process. And he said, okay, we're talking Tuesday. So that's,
and then there's the licensing fees and the economics of it.
yeah, right. Core Clarity is 150 a person. Ours is, you know, anywhere from 25 a person if they don't have an in-house coach, to down to $5 a person if we've got, I don't know, what's the break point? 500 people or more, it's $5 a person or something like that. We've got a scaling number. It starts, the enterprise model starts at $10 a person for 50 licenses. So, I mean, it's no brainer. And the cost for internal, you know, it's discretionary budget for most managers. And what I'm now finding is that the people who are responding most to signing up for training are managers who want to get better at what they're doing and have something that they can do ongoing with the team. So the money that they would normally be spending for team building or outside workshops or stuff like that, they're using to up their own skills. So that's become kind of an aha for me that, wow, this is a bigger market. They have more of a need because they're in the pressure point and they're responding to this like that. Good questions. All right. So are you seeing the spreadsheet?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you can see I've started out, and what I'd like to do is jump to some of the ones that are either in italics or orange or any one you get curious about. And you can see part of what I've done, like with Achiever, is shifted to I am driven, I have drive. One of my traits is drive, just as a way of figuring out a rhythm. Activator, I am catalytic instead of I am catalyst. It sounds like who's the person that's saying I am woman? Watch me roar. You know, I am catalyst. Watch me spark. But I have catalyst, or one of my traits is catalyst. So I'm not sure, that doesn't flow as well for me, but it technically works. So my criteria is I want it to be as grammatically correct as possible. I want it to capture the essence. Doesn't have to be perfect. I want to also have it relate, you know, emotionally connect, where people want to own that for themselves. So as you look through this, are there any, all the way down to discipline, that you've got an observation on, a question on, that we want to open up as part of the discussion? And wherever you see I've got a blank, like with belief. Oh, and one of the questions was that values-driven and purpose-driven seem to be the same thing, but they're really not. Values are principles and core values, you know, the things that ground you. Purpose is why, is the why question. Values is the what you stand for question. And so it may look like they're too similar, and that may be a criteria for us to change it, but that's the differentiator that I see between those two.
So Rex, I'm having a little bit of problem identifying my activator as fearless. It may be just me.
Well, there's two descriptors for it. There's either catalyst or fearless. So activator is one of those chameleon strengths. So I've taken it through the two different, one is the spark plug, getting it started, sense of urgency, catalyst. The other one is the boldness, willing to try anything, fail fast strength. So those are the two sides in activator, one brought out by Core Clarity and the other brought out by Gallup. Now, does catalyst come closer for you?
Actually, no, your description of the second one is definitely my activator. I just wonder, this isn't it. There's something missing for me, and it's like I am fearlessly effective kind of thing. Not only will I try it, but it's going to be effective.
So what doesn't that's a great combination. I'm fearlessly effective. What doesn't connect for you with that combination?
No, that combination does it for me. It just feels like the fearless is missing something. I'm not just fearless. It's like when my activator kicks in, I'm not haphazardly fearless.
Yes, for you, but others that don't have that, the kryptonite side is sometimes I act and speak before I think.
Well, that's me too.
Okay.
But it could be the effect of my maximizer onto activator kind of thing. So anyway.
Sure. Yeah. You want it perfect. Well, and that's one reason why we want to add these different ways to express it. I am fearless. I have fearlessness. My slogan is get her going or get her started. Take risks, fail fast. Those are all part of helping give context and language. And as you get into this, you're going to see the real challenge that I faced trying to figure out what's a good alternative word for all these different kinds of things that fit. So I'm going to acknowledge on the front end that this is not going to be perfect. But I'm in good company because Gallup's isn't perfect either.
Can I share two observations,
yes.
Rex? The first one is is it helpful? Like if you look at line 14, competition, you have the word winning, and then later as I am a winner. Can you use I am winning and use ing at the end of some of these that are an optimizer, I am optimizing, or is that not in the right tense for future use?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm not a grammarian, so I do have an editor who is an English major looking at these as well. We've created this spreadsheet to help have another filter lens through this. I'm comfortable with saying, hey, I'm a winner. That's what I do. I win. But the other two, I am winning, or I have the trait of winning. I'm in agreement that doesn't get me as excited. And maybe go ahead.
Just a thought. The other thought is, as we all know on this call, there's definitions are in dictionaries, but meanings are in people, right? So we'll never get to a full consensus. It's not possible. We all have different meanings for these things. So at some point you got to say, here it is. Let's move on.
Well, and that's why I say this is a weigh-in conversation. So because I own it, I'm wanting, this is a Senate hearing. This is advise and consent.
Well, let's not drag it down that far.
Senate.
Yeah. Well, that's supposed to be one of the roles of the Senate is advise and consent. But trust me, in the end, I'm going to take all of this, think through it, ask my advisor, ChatGPT, what the real answer is, and then we'll figure this out. But I'm on the home stretch. The book is got to be finished before the end of the month.
Nice. I've got a comment I want to make, or a question I want to ask about competition.
Yes.
But first, I want to congratulate Joseph, and I love the book. Trust Me is great, but the tagline I think is really critical. And the tagline is discovering trust in a culture of distrust. And that's where we operate as consultants. We operate in this dynamic of distrust that's all around us, that we're helping people coach through when they never approach us as trust being the problem. They always have a problem with X, Y, or Z, but we always walk in and find out that's not your problem. Your problem is trust. So I just, the idea that we're in a culture of distrust, I think, is really key. But anyway, congratulations, Joseph. I'm looking forward to reading it. So my question is about competition. I look at competition two ways. One way, people that have it have a nature to compare. They are always comparing themselves, their situation, their world to others. Is mine better? I think the whole idea of winning comes after the idea of comparison. So I think comparison is central and primary to all people that have competition. I'm not sure winning is, but winning has always been the label. So I've always had a little confusion about that, because I think comparison is primary as well. And maybe it's one or the other, or maybe one happens first. So I wanted to kind of throw that question out to the group.
Thanks, Gary. Just throw me under the bus and expose me to everybody.
So that's a great insight. The instinctive nature for competition is always benchmarking. Where are we based on whatever winning looks like? And then modulating based on that. So let's play on what Gary said, and I'm going to create another column here that we can insert.
Oh, one thing real quick. We're jumping topics slightly, but congratulations to Mr. Tubbs on your new role with Regents. That's awesome.
Thank you, sir. You can see that's a new background. So
Yep. That's what made me think of it. I was like, he's somewhere else.
Yeah. And since I'm an alumni, don't hit me up for any donations.
Oh no, I will.
All right. Okay, so let's use Gary's riff and look at competition. How would we rename it based on that comparison, scorekeeping, benchmarking side?
Gary, you're on mute.
Sorry, somebody just came up to me and started talking to me. It's the problem about being in public places. Where were we? So
picking up on the comparison, scorekeeping, benchmarking nature, what kind of word can we use that captures that essence, that somebody says, man, I identify with that. That captures me.
I wrote this down. I immediately went to, I'm a pace setter. Like, to be a pace setter, you have to constantly be benchmarking, seeing where other people are and being out front. And
setting the pace setter.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the song, I Can Do Anything Better Than You.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Pace setter. Yeah. So I like pace setter. What do others think of that?
I guess I feel like I break the pace. Like, more so it's like, there's the pace. That's too slow. We want to go faster and get there before everyone.
Like setting the standard, setting your own standard. Yeah, but that's not the comparison though.
Yeah. Standard bearer. I can see that for maximizer, standard bearer as possible for maximizer. I like that one. How would we use this in the different? I am a pace setter. I have pace setting. I have the trait of pace setting. Okay. So what would the slogan
I
be?
have the trait of setting the pace.
Yeah, I was going to say, I
Okay.
set the pace.
I set the pace. Okay.
Which, Nathan, goes to exactly what you were saying. Here's the pace, but I'm going to set it faster. I'm going to be the lead in this. I'm going to, you know, compared to you, I'm going to be better.
Right.
Not barometer.
Barometer I like for maybe one of the relating strengths, like harmony. That's it. I like that. I'm going to put that down under the harmony one.
One comment, Rex, is I always like active voice over passive voice, and ing words are always passive. So the more we can say, this is my identity, this is my strength.
I am.
Yeah.
Okay. So Dan, part of the homework I'm going to have for you is through that educator grammar lens, take a run at these, and all of you should have a link to this sheet. So if you want to put any comments on, you can. All right. What about communication? Bringing ideas to life is part of the underlying. The slogan here, we have word wizard.
I like the expressive. I definitely lean towards the expressive side versus the persuasive side. But I think that fits. I don't know if that's different than last week, but yeah, I liked that one. I know Cammie also has communication, not to throw her under the bus.
Before I saw word wizard, I thought of wordsmith, but I think I might like word wizard better.
Wizard.
Okay. All right.
Wordsmith goes under maximizer.
Ah, that's good.
Said the communicator with maximizer.
I'm going to go
be
down to
so.
maximizer and put down standard bearer. I like that. Okay, that's another good option. So we've got connectedness outside of the purpose-driven one. The element that is, it's basically a 3 degrees of separation magic gift. You meet somebody and you immediately find where you guys have common history or roots. I just don't know a good word that captures that. Very, you know, it amazes people. If Kurt Andre were on, you know, I've traveled with him, and no matter where we go, whatever airport we're in, we'll sit down next to somebody, and all of a sudden he found that he and his dad served in Germany together, and the two of them went to the same school but different. As soon as he opens his mouth, I've gotten to say, "Oh my gosh, here we go," and I'll say that to him as soon as he opens his mouth, and he'll just smile like it's a challenge. So, what is that ability?
I think the image that I like with that is a thread.
Common,
yeah, common thread. So through every idea or topic or subject, those that have connectedness strength can find a common thread, and that thread sort of weaves through. That thread is what unifies our, you know, our life, right? All of our ideas have something in common.
Yeah. So when we go into the I am, I have, one of my traits is, how do we do that? And we can say I am the common thread, or I have the common thread.
Yeah,
well,
I'm not the common thread. I find it.
I
How
find
about I weave the common thread.
There you go, Cammie.
Because I think what's important is that I'm not the one doing it, I'm discovering it.
Yeah. find, so yours is find the common. Yeah.
Yeah, I see the common thread. That reminds me of Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more than you see it though. I mean, there's a lot of times I'll see a common thread, but I freaking do not want to talk to people as much as Kurt does.
Yeah.
So he kind of brings activity to it.
He pulls the thread.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
My husband's the same way. Drives me crazy. It's like, can we sit?
So if we were going to use common thread, how would we say I am in an I am statement?
I really love that weaver idea, but that's my vote.
I am a weaver, or
I weave the common thread.
Yeah, I like that because you're seeing it, but like what you guys both just said, you also have to do work to connect it.
Yeah.
And that's
A lot of people see it, but they don't do the connecting.
Yeah,
Right.
That's great. That's brilliant.
Right. And then I have, how do we say the I have?
Great threads.
I have what?
Being a smartass. Great threads.
That's Maximizer.
Okay.
Maximizers have great threads.
Insight. I have.
Yeah, that's where I was headed.
Okay. One of my traits is weaving common threads.
I like Intuit. Intuit's good too. I mean, the thing is though, it's like what he does is he investigates with people. He talks and asks and engages in order to draw out those threads. So I like Intuit, but
yeah,
I think it's more investigation.
Yeah, it's a little bit of detective work. You know, you're that connecting the dots, the mystery of the puzzle. I like it. Okay. That's a great, I love common thread as the name of the talent. The I am, or I weave the common thread. And we'll have to play with these more, but refining is not what I need to do now. The main thing, what I want to do is really get clarity on these trait names. For consistency, one of them is of course fairness. The other is routine and predictability. So which of those, I am predictable. I am, of course, we can't use the word consistent, but is predictable the same as consistent? Is routine? Which of these words or another word would capture that side of consistency?
I think I am predictable wraps it up for me.
Okay.
I first thought reliable, but I have plenty of people in my life that are predictable and not reliable, but I know they're predictably going to be unreliable.
They're good. Okay.
So, but is consistency more reliable than predictable, or the other way?
Well, consistency is an ordered life. So everything happens, eat the same thing, take the same route. That's one
Always
side.
Late.
Yeah. Whatever it is, you can count on it
showing up.
Right. And that's, of course, the kryptonite side.
Right.
Which gives an amazing opportunity. And fairness is the other side, treating everybody the same, making no exceptions. That's the other side of the coin. Context is that how did we get here? Let's build on the past. Let's not reinvent the wheel. And so I struggled, and that's why I put it in italics. A good word that's a substitute for context.
I just asked ChatGPT about common thread. Sorry, I'm a little late
Yeah,
to the party.
that's okay.
I am the interconnected thread.
Oh,
I don't know if that fits, but I guess that defeats the purpose though, because what we were saying is that it's not that I am the thread. But I'm just playing in ChatGPT with it, and I thought that was an
okay.
interesting spin.
Yeah.
One thought that I had, so connectedness is in my top 5 too, and this like relates a lot to what I saw that I would do in counseling, is people would automatically feel connected to me because I would find these threads that made us feel similar. But I think that so even weaving the thread or being the interconnected thread, for some reason that feels like pressure to me, of like it's something I have to do instead of something I am. And so I wonder if like I am insightful, I am something that's a little bit more just like a statement about self instead of something that I do, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Just a thought.
Yeah. And I think
threads.
I think it's workable to have a strength or a trait and then have different descriptors of that. Some of them simply an adjective version of it. Some of them a synonym for it. So I think I can work with a convention like that.
So I don't have consistency. So I'm just wondering if someone who has consistency, we call them predictable, if we automatically are proposing that they are boring. Like, will they in and of themselves think, oh, my predictability is a great thing, or oh, you're calling me like just this bore?
Well, good question. Now, when I talk about consistency, I typically open up with what's your morning routine? And 100% of the time, it's either this is my breakfast and I eat the same thing, or I don't eat breakfast at all. And I said, and I'll ask, but they seem to own that their life is ordered. And maybe that's an additional adjective to predictable, is ordered. I am ordered.
Rex, I'm drawn to steadiness. Like I feel like the strength that this person brings to the team is they bring stability to a team. So something with steadiness, maybe.
Okay. And that can be the same thing that Cammie sees, that they're steady in terms of they always show up 30 minutes late.
What about conforming? Because they always conform to the same patterns.
I think that falls into the feeling Joseph was having about, oh, do I want to be seen as conforming?
Well, and conforming kind of communicates that you don't have any control over the situation, that you're moldable, meltable, kind of formable.
Don't rock the boat.
Yeah, but orderly sounds like I have control.
Well, and I like steadiness too, because we think of these people as steady Eddie,
right?
The turtle versus the hare, the tortoise versus the hare. So I'm going to play with that because I like it. And all right, so let's now move into context, and we probably should be wrapping up with context, which means we're probably going to be revisiting this again.
With context, I like the image of a fish swimming in water, right? So it's like the old fish going by the young fish saying, "Hey, how's the water?" And the young fish looking at his friend going, "What is he talking about?" The idea of the context gives us the air that we breathe, the water that we swim in. So many people totally miss that what the context is, and so the people who have context can see it. They know they're swimming in water.
So that's great. What kind of word outside of perspective?
Yeah.
And again, part of context is looking at the blueprint, the foundations. How did we get here? And before we go forward, and the person who brings that in, we sometimes say they're bringing in some perspective to the conversation, which typically means history, context, how do we sit into what you're saying? How does this sit into the bigger, how do we nest in the bigger system here?
I'm not sure this. Go ahead. I'm not sure this helps, but I agree, Dan. It's like a person with this understands the weightiness of the situation or the experience. They feel the gravity of whatever it is. That doesn't help with what we're trying to do here, but that's my experience.
But it gives some good perspective on it.
It's someone who recognizes that the decision that we're making now is either going to keep us going in the same direction or depart from it. And so if they really appreciate the context, which if they have context, a lot of times they're the ones that really appreciate the history and where we're coming from. And so they generally are the people who will tell the ones that want to change everything to slow down and stop, right? So it's like,
so it makes me think of like situational awareness, institutional awareness. Like awareness is an idea that comes to mind, because it's related to perspective and context. Like a deep awareness of. I don't want to use the word context. Yeah,
I like that. The circumstances are important. The setting that something exists in, the environment, the circumstances are all descriptions of the same thing. It's a kind of an overview to look at something in.
It's great. So for now, I haven't heard a better word than perspective or alternative, but all those elements fit in terms of the decision we're making now. There's a history that we would be foolish not to take into consideration. And it has implications going forward that we need to consider. And so I think those two sides of it, I'm comfortable that perspective, especially when we have the other qualifying words, will help capture that piece of it. So before we end, I gotta stop at maximizer. And I get that zest is lame. That's what Nathan told me you said. Boy, that's lame. How did Rex come up with that? I had passion as one, and we've got standard bearer as another. So when we toggle between those two, standard bearer is the level of expectation. Passionate is the underlying drive to meet that standard. Is there something that helps us capture both? And there's other words like connoisseur.
I just like to say I'm zesty.
I'm zesty. Well,
zesty.
That happens to be a virtue trait in the virtues assessment is zest, which is connected with achiever. That's kind of the translator there. Nobody's got any input on maximizer.
Amplify.
Oh.
Drive. Something around strive.
I keep coming to like elevate. Like I take something as it is and I make it better. I elevate it.
How about composer? The way an orchestra leader leads.
That has more implications behind just the standard of, or the expectation, the passion, the perfectionism. Now, many conductors are perfectionists, but I'm not sure that's intuitive just in the word composer.
Conductor.
Or conductor. And
there's also an element, Rex, here of optimization.
Right.
Yep, for sure.
well, optimization and maximizing are two very different concepts.
Interesting.
Now, there may be an element of optimizing, and I always relate that to the arranger of looking at all the pieces and finding the best or the optimized use of those pieces. But maximizer is a standard of perfection, achievement. And so, maximizing gets into that same differentiation between purpose-driven and values-driven. Very similar, but at the same time, I see a very clear dividing line in there. Now, I like elevate as
capitalize.
Okay.
Again, that could possibly be negative in our current.
Okay.
I mean, some people think of it as negative, but if you capitalize on an opportunity, you are taking full advantage of it. You are
full advantage is a good description.
Mm-hmm.
Things like gusto, zest, full advantage, connoisseur, elevate, and at the same time, elevate could be developer.
Inspirational.
Okay, inspirational. Think of William Wallace in the movie Braveheart. It was the cause. Maximizers turn issues into causes that they're willing to die for and let others die for it as well. So that's part of that underlying piece of maximizers.
I laugh a little bit, Rex, because I can think of some maximizers who are absolutely not inspirational in any way.
Right.
They're exhausting.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right.
All right.
Yeah, I infamously on a video shoot, I'm always referred to the director who says, "That's perfect. Let's do it one more time."
One more time. Yep.
Just one more time.
We're almost there. We're almost there.
I know I can get it past perfect.
Right. Yep. Yeah. It's never satisfied.
Never.
Always something better. So I should respect your times and end here and not try to maximize this final conversation with the perfect outcome. But you do have access to the spreadsheet. So if you add something, don't erase what's in there. Just add it in with whatever kind of marks, just like we did with Elevate with a dash as another option.
That captures it. Elevate one more time tells you it's very descriptive. It's a lot of words, but it's very descriptive.
Okay. So if we can get that down, those of you who are word wizards and wordsmithers, if that's a word, I'll look forward for your thoughts after a glass of wine with a inspirational sunset.
Gary has the beer going already.
Yeah. All right.
Rex, do you want to mention next week?
Next week we have Bill Seed. Bill is a longtime colleague, client that I introduced to Core Clarity, in 2009, 2010, when he was running UHS and all their projects, and we built it into their project partnering. He then went on to Disney and managed the mega construction for both Florida and Orlando, a changing of the guard at Disney with a less enlightened, more price-driven approach. And then he went down to Jackson Memorial Hospital. He's written a couple books on lean practices. He's an LCI guru and a leadership guru, very familiar with Genius Spark. He made a presentation to the Jackson Memorial Executive Leadership. He was asked to come in to give a presentation on leadership to the top leaders. And having done more than a couple hundred projects, he put that into a 45-minute presentation. The slide deck is in Basecamp. And so I think we're going to get a lot of value out of it. What I liked and what captured me is he used his journey on strengths and character and the self-aware leader part as part of his presentation on the essentials of leadership. And I think you're going to find a nice application of Genius Spark in the presentation. All right.
Awesome.
Everyone go and buy Joseph's book, and we'll see you next week. Hey, Maddie. All right. Woohoo.
Bye, guys. Have a great day.
See ya.
Everyone.